A stone can be money even when it cannot be carried. On Yap, in the Western Pacific, some stores of value were large limestone discs, shaped with a hole through the center, too heavy to move easily and too visible to hide. Their power did not come from passing hand to hand. It came from people knowing where the stone was, who had brought it, and who now had a recognized claim to it. Wealth remained in place. Ownership moved through memory. Before coins, before banks, belief ruled the world. This is the central tension of the Rai stones. They were solid objects, but their monetary function was not based on circulation. A stone could stand beside a path or near a meeting house, while its ownership changed through public recognition. The object stayed fixed, but the social account around it shifted. Value was not carried away. It was reassigned. That made Rai money practical, but not simple. A person did not need to lift the stone in order to transfer it, but the transfer only worked if others accepted that it had happened. The community had to remember the history attached to the object, and that history had to remain stable over time. Yap did not contain the limestone from which the most valued Rai were made. The stones were quarried mainly in Palau, then shaped, transported and brought back across dangerous water by canoe and raft. A Rai stone was not valuable simply because it was stone. It carried evidence of labor, navigation, risk, and coordination. Its value depended on a history that could be remembered. That history was part of the asset itself. Size mattered, craftsmanship mattered, but so did the difficulty of obtaining the stone, the danger of the voyage, and the status of the people involved in its movement. The value was partly narrative. This was not exchange in the modern sense. The stone did not have to move from seller to buyer in order for ownership to change. Instead, the community had to accept that the transfer had occurred. If people forgot or disputed the story, the stone remained present, but its function became uncertain. The system only worked as long as recognition continued. Rai stones were used in serious social transactions, marriage arrangements, inheritance, political settlements, alliances, compensation, and other obligations. Their scale suited moments where value had to signal permanence. A small payment could move quietly. A Rai stone required social attention. Because they were difficult to make and move, the stones resisted casual transfer. A person could not simply spend one impulsively. Immobility made the system less flexible but more stable within the community that recognized it. Wealth was held in public view, and public view helped enforce it. But public enforcement created a burden. The stone did not defend ownership by itself. People defended it by remembering. They had to know which stone belonged to whom, how it had changed hands, and whether the transfer was accepted. Shared knowledge can be strong within a community, but fragile when recognition must extend beyond it. A person constrained by this system did not possess wealth only because a stone stood nearby. He possessed wealth because others accepted his claim. If he needed to settle an obligation, he depended on a public account he did not control alone. The stone might remain exactly where it was. The obligation remained, even when the object did not move. One famous feature of Yapi's stone money is that possession was not always necessary. Accounts describe a stone lost at sea that could still be treated as valuable because the community accepted that it existed and recognized its history. The stone could be absent, but the claim could remain. This made Rye stones more than carved limestone. They were entries in a public memory system, maintained through oral transmission, rank, ceremony, and repeated acknowledgement. At this point, the system becomes clearer and more constrained. Rye stones allowed value to be stored without movement, but they required continuous recognition. Without recognition, ownership might remain asserted, but it could no longer be verified. This separated Rye stones from many commodity monies. Salt could be consumed, cowries could be counted and carried. Fur, cocoa, tobacco, and tea could move through trade. Rye stones did something different. They made immobility useful. Their lack of portability forced the community to separate the object from the act of transfer. Value became less about handling and more about acknowledged claim. Yet the same feature that made Rye stones powerful also limited them. They worked best where people shared social memory and understood the histories attached to particular stones. A stranger could see the stone, but not necessarily know its story. Without the story, the stone was only carved limestone. The value depended on a context that could not travel as easily as the claim. Later contact with iron tools and European transport introduced another strain. Stones could be made larger and moved more easily than before. Easier production changed scarcity itself. Older stones, linked to harder quarrying and more dangerous transport, could retain greater prestige than newer ones. The system had to judge how the stone had entered circulation. The Rye stones made wealth visible, but not easily movable. They made ownership transferable, but not private. They made value durable, but not universally readable. Immobility protected the object. It did not remove the need for enforcement. If a social boundary was crossed where the story of the stone was unknown, its value weakened. The object could remain present, but its meaning no longer traveled with certainty. The system was locally stable, but it could not easily scale beyond the people who preserved the same memory. As transactions grew more frequent and distant, the human mind became an insufficient ledger. A system was needed that could preserve obligation across space and time without requiring the entire community to remember it. In the next episode, we will examine how tally sticks turned wood into verifiable credit. Through matching cuts and divided records, obligation began to survive when shared memory was no longer enough.